It's your turn. Now. It's your turn.
If I were to ask you to define a curse, how would you respond? Based on the many interactions and discussions I've had with other people after posing this question, I'd assume that your answer is one that is rather straightforward and by the books, essentially equating to a dictionary definition along the lines of a curse being something forcefully placed upon someone meant to harm them and make them suffer. And while this definition in a vacuum is holistically correct, there is something that I think the dictionary definition of curse can't provide when talking within the context of a series that deals in subtleties and nuance like My Hero Academia. Understanding what the core missing piece of this definition is in terms of context requires us to look not only at My Hero Academia itself, but the source material that its author Kohei Horikoshi draws his most inspiration from, being the medium of Western superhero comic books. And in order to detect these inspirations, you need to look no further than the themes of heroism that are concurrent with extremely popular and culturally significant heroes like Batman, Spider-Man, and even Superman in their classic comic book iterations. Horikoshi is one who wears his inspirations proudly on his sleeve, displaying his extensive knowledge and enjoyment of Western comics through his designs, concepts, and even manga cover volumes from time to time. With his muse being the general idea of heroism that was and to some extent is still perpetuated in the comic book industry, it is needless to say that Horikoshi is a comic book fan, and an extremely proud one at that. With this information being present, what exactly is the missing piece that I was alluding to earlier? What is the nuanced aspect of curse that I was talking about, and why is it something that even a dictionary, in my opinion, fails to house within its pages? To find your answer, all you have to do is crack open the comic book pages of one of the most iconic and inspirational heroes of all time, and Horikoshi's arguably biggest and most popular inspiration, the Amazing Spider-Man. And something that makes explaining and breaking down Horikoshi's inspiration so simple is that everybody knows Spider-Man. Even if you're not into comic books whatsoever, if you've been on this planet for at least long enough to even care about what I'm talking about within the realm of this video, it's inevitable that you are aware of his character and overall themes, at least to some extent. But in case you guys need a quick refresher, I got you. Spider-Man is a character that in the comics, TV shows, movies, and every other form of media share at least one core trait between them. This trait, rather than a particular way in which they act or carry themselves, stems from the ideology that Uncle Ben imparted to them before his untimely demise, and has become one of the most famous and popular quotes in comic book history.
With great power comes great responsibility.
This mindset that all these Spider-Men live by in their respective mediums is very straightforward, yet a hard creed to live by. What this simple sentence entails for Peter Parker is that because of the powers that were bestowed upon him against his free will, he is now burdened with an unimaginable amount of weight and responsibility. A responsibility that, in all honesty, he wouldn't be forced to carry if it weren't for his powers. Even though to most people within the Spider-Man universe and outside of it, Spider-Man's amazing strength, agility, speed, spider sense, and other abilities are all gifts that we would sacrifice a lot for. But to Spider-Man, no. To Peter, these powers are a double-edged sword. Sure, they allow him to do what most else can't, but this also forces Peter Parker to make sacrifices that most other people won't. And this was the realization that clicked within my head, and might now be clicking in yours, especially if you are like me and have been for a long time had this nagging suspicion that One for All was a flawed power fueled by a flawed ideology. Unlike what the dictionary will tell you about a curse, they aren't exclusively bad. In fact, oftentimes curses in these types of stories are nothing more than an amazing power or ability that everyone wants and desires, but the responsibilities and baggage tied with that power are so unimaginably heavy that most would crumble in an instant under the sheer pressure of it all. With this in mind, understand that Horikoshi's inspirations from Spider-Man and many other superhero comic book characters like him does not stop at just the surface level. It doesn't stop with cool character designs or cool character poses in order to put on your chapter or volume covers. It goes much deeper than that. The sense of heroism and justice, the responsibility, the curse that is placed upon these heroes is also something that I genuinely think Deku is burdened with as well. And this burden, this curse, was given to him by his idol and one of the people he had the most respect for, Toshinori Yagi, more famously known as All Might. The shortcomings of All Might as a teacher and as a hero are something that I think in their entirety deserve a video completely dedicated exclusively to those shortcomings. However, the one shortcoming in particular that I will cover here and now is the curse that he gave unto Deku. Now, just by me saying that, I am well aware that many of you are confused or maybe even profusely disagree with me. All Might saw potential in Deku and gave him the power to be a hero. Deku wanted the power to save people and All Might gave it to him. All Might giving Deku one for all to save so many lives, how could you say it's a mistake? These sentiments and thoughts are not only completely understandable, but for the most part, true. Did All Might see the makings of a hero in Deku? Yes. Did Deku desire this power and All Might simply fulfilled this request? Of course. And has Deku having one for all truly saved many lives, including that of an abused child? 100%. So how can I agree with all the points that seemingly go against my premise, but still draw the conclusion that I have? The answer to that is rather simple. In my mind, All Might gifting the most powerful ability in all the series to a 15-year-old boy who clearly shows little to no regard for his own life, without warning him of the major repercussions that the power will have beforehand, is simply put, irresponsible. And it is irresponsible on All Might's part for several reasons. The first of which being that All Might did not have the foresight to see how a truly altruistic person having this power would affect the mind of a young child, especially when the power you are giving to them can cripple this boy for life if not used properly. It is also irresponsible in my mind to blindly indulge in the wishes of a young, emotional, and impressionable child simply because they impressed you once and desire the ability to become a hero more than anything. At the end of the day, I truly think people need to come to terms with the fact that what All Might did, while understandable and grounded in somewhat logical arguments, at least from his perspective, placed an irreversible curse on a kid who truly had no idea what this power would get him into. If you aren't convinced yet, let me lay out the situation as blatantly as I possibly can to make it clear. All Might, a grown man and pro-hero for years, saw Deku, a quirkless child, rush towards the aid of someone and show the makings of a hero in All Might's eyes. This same All Might decides to promise an extremely impressionable and impulsive child the ability to become a hero, knowing that Deku most likely does not have the mental capacity to restrict himself if he knows someone is in danger. All Might is very aware that if someone of Deku's stature uses one for all, he might cripple himself. In fact, he could cripple himself after his 10 months of training that All Might put him through. He also decides to ignore or simply be ignorant of the fact that placing the pressure of succeeding the greatest hero ever on a child could possibly affect Deku's mindset detrimentally for the rest of his life. In spite of all of this, in spite of every single negative and drawback to giving Deku one for All Might places this burden onto the shoulders of Izuku Midoriya, cursing him with the power. In fact, in the manga, All Might has admitted that what he has done to Deku is the same as putting the weight as the crippling responsibility that caused All Might to separate himself from Night Eye and be foretold to have an inexplicably gruesome death. So at this point, it would be needless to say that just based on the arguments and definitions I've laid out within the realm of this video, it'd be pretty easy to argue that my definition for curse and what one for all truly is would fit the bill of a curse, at least within the context of this video, superheroes, and My Hero Academia. It becomes even more clear that it fits the bill of what we are defining as a curse, especially when you take into account the inspirations from a character like Spider-Man, who wields the double-edged sword of a curse in the sheath of a gift. Deku clearly possesses potentially unimaginable power and strength within this world, but on the back end of that, his power when used to its fullest extent quite literally damages him and harms him almost beyond repair. It, by the dictionary and set definition within this video, is a curse. So technically, I could end the video off right here, have made some good points, and wrap it up with a good video talking about the curse of one for all. However, as I was writing out my thoughts for this video, something dawned on me. One for all is not just an ability that happens to be a curse when placed in the hands of Deku or All Might. One for all, just like many other problems in the world of My Hero and in the real world, are systematic and more complex than just involving a couple of people. So, to take the premise of this video one step further, I want to look at one for all as a power and explain why the very concept of it is inherently negative, toxic, and a curse to every single person that it's been given to. A hero society built upon the foundation of one singular hero doesn't work. We know it doesn't, especially in My Hero Academia, because we've seen the results of this kind of society firsthand. All Might's era of heroism, while on the surface was the safest Japan had ever been, only created a stronger divide between those who were safe in the light that was produced with a smile, and those who hid from that smile in the shadows, loathing the corruption that even Japan's #1 hero could not fix. Shigaraki, Toga, Twice, Spinner, Stain, Gentle, Dabi, and several other villains in the My Hero Academia universe exist in the capacity that they do now because of the personal corruption and societal corruption that was hidden from the public by the feeling of security and safety given by All Might and many other heroes' presence. Shigaraki exists because no one helped him in his most desperate time of need, and because of the rage his family felt due to another One For All user. Because Shigaraki's father was mentally scarred by Nana Shimura taking One For All and choosing heroism over him, he lashed out at Shigaraki's desire to become a hero and suppressed his mind and quirk in a way that resulted in the incarnation of destruction that we have now. This statement is not meant to absolve Shigaraki's father of any responsibility, but what this does display is that Shigaraki's tragic story could have been avoided if the current ideals of One For All and even the power of One For All were not perpetuated and passed on back then. Toga being forced to be normal, even though her quirk psychologically predisposed her to being different than most other people, built up a resentment and insanity that simply pushed her over the edge when she finally indulged. Stain, seeing the false heroes that would only hold up in times of peace, pushed him to try to cull everyone who wasn't up to the task of being a real hero in his eyes. And Dabi was a product of endeavor trying to catch up to and surpass All Might in one way or another. And the pressure placed upon Dabi as a mere child broke him completely. If you notice, every core villain in the series aside from All For One stems from All Might in some way, shape, or form. And you may be thinking that it is unfair to place this burden all on All Might. He did everything he could, and saying that everything that is happening right now is 100% his fault alleviates some of the burden from other characters in the series. And that's a fine point to make. The thing that deserves the blame, the total blame in my eyes, is not the person, but the ideology and the power that backs said ideology. One for all. This power and ideal is the problem in my eyes. As straightforward as it sounds, this power is quite literally the embodiment of one person working to save everyone around them. Regardless of the irreparable damage it causes themselves and the ones around them that they love, they are willing to put their own body on the line, their mental state on the line, and their friend's mental state on the line, so long as it allows them to be the hero that they think they need to be. As I stated previously, we have empirical evidence that this idea simply does not work. We've had 8 prior generations of heroes to prove this does not work. All this does is push the marginalized people in society even further into the shadows, which pushes them to do anything and everything they can to display their own importance and identity, and honestly, rightfully so. In spin-off series such as My Hero Academia Vigilantes, we see that even pro heroes as a totality, as a unit, are not enough to catch everything that slips through the cracks. And if every hero in the society cannot uphold the standards of a hero and cannot keep peace amongst the many, how do we expect one single hero to do it? How do we expect one person to be able to fight for everyone efficiently? If even this deep into the video you are doubting the validity of my assertions, let me ask you this. If we know that all that One For All does is harm the person cursed with the ability and doesn't even save everyone as you would expect, what else could this power be but a cruel and twisted ability that is continuously harmed and hurt most likely just as many people as it has saved? What would you call an ability? No. A philosophy that predicates itself on putting the burden of generations upon generations of trauma, pain, suffering, and agony all on one individual human being to hold. If you think I'm exaggerating or being overdramatic in my depiction of One For All as a concept, simply look at how the power functions in the series. One For All is not a simple strength or speed enhancing quirk, but a power storing one that literally builds up as it is passed down from generation to generation. From the originator of this ability all the way to Deku, this power is built up continuously, slowly but surely filling to the brim. This, in my mind, can be interpreted as not just the literal power, but the emotions, the feelings, the guilt, the weight, and the responsibility of all of these previous generations being stacked from person to person until it is passed on. In fact, because we know that the vestiges are constructed of their past memories, knowledge, and feelings, it is not far-fetched in any sense of the word to say that One For All users are burdened with the emotional suffering and trauma that previous users went through. And you know what's very interesting about this ability, especially within the context of My Hero Academia and Deku? As far as we know, no other One For All user blew up when using the power except for Deku, the one who was seeing the repercussions of all of this buildup, of all of this villainy coming to the surface. This works narratively and thematically on multiple levels. This obviously gives Deku a wall to overcome, displays simply how awesomely powerful One For All's ability is, and also foreshadows the consequences of the ideology of said ability. Now, I don't want to catch anyone off guard, but it is rather unsurprising that if you hold the evil, the malice, and the pain of an entire marginalized group for generations, at some point or another, it's simply going to blow up in a way that isn't containable by just one person. Exactly how Deku's limbs cannot contain 100% of One For All, even 300 chapters into the series. This is something that may be completely unintentional on Horikoshi's part. However, the fact that Deku's body can quite literally represent the failings of an outdated and toxic ideology is something that I find very impressive. Even more so when you realize that I was able to glean all of this information through visual storytelling and using Deku's body symbolically, rather than Horikoshi simply expositing this message in a very direct way that lacks the proper nuance. Nonetheless, before concluding this video, I would like to take one final look at One For All and really hammer in the point of it being a curse that is placed upon Deku's shoulders. And in order to do this, we must look at the most recent chapters of the My Hero Academia manga. Quick aside, for all of those who have made it to this point in the video and are not caught up to the manga, I'd like to thank you for listening to what I have to say up to this point, and I hope you guys stick around in the channel for more My Hero Academia content, and if you do like it, make sure to subscribe to all the good stuff. But from this point forward, I am going to be diving into manga spoilers in specific, so once again, if you do not want to be spoiled in My Hero Academia's manga in any form, click off the video now. Every anime only gone? Cool. So, Deku's mental and physical state is in complete shambles, and it is for all of the reasons that I've been outlining for the entire video up to this point. For the past several chapters, Deku has been suffering from severe strain and struggle due to All For One trying to break him. And if you want a video fully breaking down this negative journey Deku has been on for quite a while, I have a video specifically for that you can check out after this one. However, the TLDR of that situation is that Deku has gone to the point in his mental instability where he's not eating, not sleeping, not showering, and not stopping until he gets a lead on All For One or someone forcibly puts a stop to him. This, while at first glance is seemingly very impressive and admirable, becomes much more gruesome and tragic when you put into perspective that currently a 16-year-old child has been doing nothing but non-stop fighting and holding the balance of his home and loved ones solely on his shoulders. Now, to be completely transparent and honest, part of the blame does befall Deku, as his very extreme altruistic nature has pushed him to make decisions that in the long run could be extremely detrimental to his health and well-being moving forward. Despite that, when you take a few steps back and look at the bigger, more overarching picture, you start to realize something. That personality of his, this drive to save everyone even if it cost him his own mental and physical health, to some extent stems from All Might, at least in part. Deku was raised in an environment that was infatuated with selflessness and hero culture at a very young age. His already caring and heroic nature was most likely amplified tenfold by the conditioning that being a hero was being invincible and saving everyone regardless of how you personally felt. All Might's influence and drive stems from the training and conditioning from Nana Shimura, the previous user of One For All, and the woman who drilled into All Might that a hero is one who saves people with a smile on his face. This inadvertently is what pushed All Might to do his best as a hero, pushing himself past his limits and imparting the twisted and warped altruism onto the next generation of heroes. Nana Shimura's ideology most likely stemmed from the user before her, and the cycle continues backwards until you reach the first One For All user, the core of the power and the beliefs that One For All users stand for. At this point, are you starting to see the trend? Person after person, generation after generation, some unlucky soul is thrust into the role of pillar of society. In the beginning of the series, it was All Might, who was the symbol of peace that everyone needed to save them. Now it's Deku, who is currently in an even worse position than All Might was at his time. His only saving grace seems to be his friends who are doing their absolute best to stop Deku and make him aware of the flaws in his current idea of heroism. It's the relationships, the heroism, and the efforts of everyone he saved in some way or another that will hopefully finally break the curse of One For All. Well, that is my take on one of the most important powers and aspects of the My Hero Academia manga. I really enjoyed putting this video together and put everything I had into this video in particular. I genuinely hope you all enjoyed, and if you did and want to see more content like this on the channel, consider subscribing and hitting the bell so you don't miss out on more content like this in the near future. Links to similar videos will be left in the description down below and in the cards and end screens. But in any case, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and as always, this is Broken Ronin signing off.